On that sunny afternoon, as I strolled beside the creek, I was oblivious to the impending transformation of my life. My name is Layla, and this narrative recounts how a fleeting moment of curiosity culminated in the gravest error of my existence. The air was invigorating, imbued with the fragrance of wildflowers and fresh grass. I frequently walked here to attain mental clarity. However, today something captured my attention. A magnificent chestnut horse grazed in a nearby pasture, its coat shimmering in the sunlight. As I approached, the horse raised its head and regarded me with gentle, intelligent eyes. Its calm and inviting gaze compelled me to draw nearer, prompting me to climb over the wooden fence without much deliberation. My shoes are somewhat sinking into the soft ground. On the other side, the horse did not shy away as I approached it. Instead, it stood perfectly still. The horse remained still, as if anticipating my approach, and I extended my hand. My hand marveled at the softness of its coat beneath my fingers. I had never been this close to a horse before, and I was struck by its size and strength. Yet, despite its powerful build, there was a gentleness that put me at ease. As I ran my hand along its side, the horse appeared to enjoy the attention. Its ears were relaxed, and it emitted a soft snort, which I interpreted as a sign of contentment. Encouraged by its calm demeanor, I decided to explore further. My hand moved lower, and that is when I noticed something I had not seen before. Hanging between the horse's back legs was what I assumed to be its genitals. Although it may seem foolish in retrospect, I was initially uninformed about equine anatomy. My curiosity overwhelmed me, and before I could dissuade myself, I had extended my hand to touch it. Investigating the horse revealed a surprisingly softer feel. It was firmer than I anticipated on the exterior, yet as I continued to probe with my fingers, I discerned a notable change. The firmness I perceived began to amplify and extend. I was captivated, having never encountered anything akin to this before, and a part of me was unable to avert my gaze. It continued to expand, ultimately reaching a length of at least a foot. The horse whinnied and tossed its head, which I interpreted as a favorable response. In retrospect, I recognized the folly and misjudgment of my initial assumptions. I was too preoccupied at the moment. Driven by my curiosity to think clearly, I crouched to have a better view, observing the horse's testicles for the first time. They were considerably larger. First impressions were more profound than I anticipated. Instinctively, I extended my hand towards the low-hanging object. I touched them as well. They felt warm and vibrant, exhibiting a slight internal movement that I could not fully articulate as I continued my study. Observed a viscous, translucent fluid beginning to exude from the apex of the horse's penis, which was unlike anything I had previously encountered. Adhesive and lustrous, reminiscent of honey. The more I engaged with it, the more of this fluid manifested, cascading down to create small pools on the ground. In a moment of reckless curiosity, I resolved to taste it. The flavor was unexpectedly saccharine, evoking the essence of apples. I now recognized the perilous and inappropriate nature of this action. At that point, I was too engrossed to contemplate the repercussions of my actions as I proceeded to consume the fluid. It became overwhelming, and I struggled to ingest it entirely, resulting in some spillage. From my lips, the horse's genitals appeared to enlarge, exacerbating the disarray on the ground and straining my mouth. Unexpectedly and abruptly, the horse began to ejaculate, the intensity of which astonished me, rendering me unable to retain it all. It sprayed over my face and hair, rendering me drenched and adhesive amongst the turmoil. I had a surge of exhilaration and gratification, which I now regret, as I was so engrossed in the moment that I failed to notice someone approaching until it was too late, much to my dismay. I gazed upward, upon observing my husband Daniel at the gate. His expression was one of amazement and revulsion. "Layla, what on earth are you?" His voice was imbued with disbelief and anger as reality descended upon me. I hastily rose to my feet, attempting to remove the debris from my face and attire. "Daniel, I can elucidate," I stammered. Yet I recognized that no justification could rectify the situation. Jake's visage twisted with fury and anguish. "Explain how you could possibly justify this," he shouted. "I am astonished by what I am witnessing. How could you perpetrate such an act?" I felt nauseated as the entire gravity of my actions overwhelmed me. "Please, Daniel. I apologize. I am uncertain of my thought process at that moment." But Daniel was unresponsive and averted his gaze. Incapable of simply making eye contact, "I no longer recognize you," he stated, his voice faltering. "This is repugnant. I cannot be in your presence, correct?" In the aftermath, he departed, leaving me solitary in the grass, where I descended to my knees. Overcome by humiliation and remorse, how could I have committed this act? How could I have so egregiously abused Jake's trust? I remained there for what seemed like hours, weeping until I was devoid of tears. The horse remained close, unaware of the anguish and turmoil it had unintentionally inflicted as the sun started its descent. I ultimately rose and proceeded homeward, anticipating the forthcoming days with trepidation. The subsequent events were a haze of disputes. Amidst tears and painful silences, Daniel briefly relocated, citing a need for space to digest the events. I immersed myself in treatment to comprehend my irresponsible behavior, resolutely aiming to prevent its recurrence, however slowly and painfully. Daniel and I commenced the reconstruction of our relationship, which proved challenging. There were instances when I doubted our ability to succeed, as the pain and betrayal appeared insurmountable. Nevertheless, we persisted, approaching each day incrementally. I made a solemn vow to myself and to Daniel that I would never engage in such behavior again, and I consciously avoided farms. As I observed the pastures, the sight of a distant horse served as a perpetual reminder of my error, yet also of my dedication to transformation. As weeks transitioned into months, I began to notice subtle indications of progress. Daniel gradually softened towards me, although the anguish remained palpable in his gaze. We commenced couples therapy, collaboratively addressing our issues. It was arduous and frequently excruciating work. However, I was resolute in my intention to demonstrate it to Jake, that I might fulfill the role of the wife he merited. Approximately 6 months post-incident, Daniel grasped my hand while we were seated on the couch. He spoke gently, expressing his desire for forgiveness and acknowledging the difficulty of the process and his lingering pain. However, he recognized my efforts and conveyed optimism about overcoming this challenge. Tears filled my eyes. However, on this occasion, the tears were emblematic of optimism. With thankfulness, I thanked Daniel, whispering, "I promise I will never disappoint you again." As I pondered on this voyage, I nearly lost everything due to a moment of weakness that almost obliterated my marriage and my self-esteem. However, this experience imparted invaluable lessons regarding self-control, the significance of communication in relationships, and the essence of forgiveness. I recognize that the path ahead will be arduous. A part of me will always remember the past, and I will bear the burden of my actions for the remainder of my life. Nevertheless, I am resolute in my commitment to progress, to becoming a better individual and a more devoted wife. If there is one lesson I wish others to glean from my narrative, it is this: regardless of your curiosity or impulses, always contemplate the repercussions of your actions. The fleeting exhilaration is never worth the ensuing pain and destruction it may inflict. To yourself and your loved ones, I am concentrating on the future. Daniel and I are gradually restoring our trust and intimacy, and we are contemplating starting a family, something that once appeared unattainable during the tumultuous aftermath of my error. This progression signifies our advancement and instills hope for the future. I have come to realize that genuine happiness does not stem from ephemeral moments of exhilaration or illicit experiences. Rather, it arises from the profound, enduring connections we cultivate with those we cherish. It is rooted in authenticity and adherence to our values, even in the face of temptation. My journey of healing and redemption remains ongoing, yet I am resolutely dedicated to its completion. Each day, I strive to embody the best version of myself in honor of Jake's forgiveness, and to construct a future characterized by love, trust, and mutual respect. As I compose this, I am reminded of a quote I once encountered: The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling but in rising every time we fall. I have indeed fallen hard on numerous occasions. However, I am ascending once again, more resilient and astute. Consequently, despite the anguish and remorse, I am appreciative of the process of restoring trust. The journey is seldom linear. As weeks transitioned into months, Daniel and I persisted in our efforts. In our relationship, moments of tension and doubt persisted, and I could perceive the pain lingering in his eyes, a constant reminder of my grave error. One evening, as we sat in our living room following a particularly challenging therapy session, Daniel turned to me with a grave expression. "Layla," he said softly, "I need to ask you something, and I require your complete honesty." My heart raced. I nodded in agreement as Jake took a big breath before asking, "Have you ever engaged in any activities?" Unlike any prior or subsequent encounters with other animals, the question struck me with the force of a blow. I instinctively anticipated its arrival. However, it was painful to hear it spoken. Daniel responded, gazing intently at him. Directly into his eyes, I had never experienced such intensity before, and never since. The events of that day were a catastrophic error that I will lament for the remainder of my life. Daniel held my gaze for an extended moment, searching for any indication of deceit. Ultimately, he nodded and said, "Okay, I believe you." Those 3 words conveyed more to me than I could articulate. They represented a slight fissure in the therapeutic barrier of mistrust that had developed between us. As we continued to navigate our relationship, I increasingly reflected on the factors that had compelled me to make such a grievous decision that day in therapy. In both individual and couples sessions, we delved into issues I had not previously recognized. Feelings of ennui in our marriage, a suppressed yearning for excitement, and profound insecurities I had never fully confronted. It was not easy to face these realities. I saw the necessity of addressing these aspects of myself to facilitate progress. Daniel, for his part, was engaged in his job. Through his personal challenges, feelings of inadequacy exacerbated by my actions, and the process of reestablishing trust following a significant betrayal. As months elapsed, changes commenced subtly. The silences between us became less strained, and we began to share laughter. Initially washing dishes with hesitation, then more liberally one evening as we cleaned. We washed the dishes jointly, a task we had consistently performed. As a cohesive unit prior to the disintegration, Daniel splashed soap bubbles at me. Though it was a trivial matter, it seemed like a significant step. Progress was made. Nevertheless, just when circumstances appeared to be enhancing, we encountered another obstacle. Jake's brother was getting married, and the celebration was scheduled to take place. Upon Daniel's revelation at the ranch, a surge of terror enveloped me. "I am uncertain if I can go," I stammered, my hands trembling as I took a seat. My coffee cup depicted Jake's face. "Sarah, we must attend my brother's wedding, although there may be horses present." Whispered guilt tinged my cheeks. Jake's expression reflected a blend of pain and aggravation. "Do you truly believe you can control yourself around horses?" His words pierced me, yet I recognized their validity. "No, it's not that I tried. I am apprehensive about your potential reaction. Observing my presence among them, I wish to spare you from that." Daniel was silent for a considerable duration before extending his hand and grasping mine. "Layla, we cannot evade horses indefinitely. Eventually, we must confront this reality, and perhaps this moment signifies that confrontation." I nodded, tears in my eyes, acknowledging your correctness. "I will go, and I assure you I will not disappoint." The day of the wedding arrived, and I was a ball of nerves as we drove to the ranch. I could sense the tension emanating from Jake. Upon our arrival, I observed the stables in the distance, causing my stomach to lurch. However, as the day progressed, an unforeseen occurrence transpired. Being in proximity to the horses, observing them from afar, and hearing their infrequent whinnies did not evoke feelings of temptation or shame inside me. It solidified my dedication to Daniel. Every time I glimpsed a horse throughout our marriage, it served as a poignant reminder of what I had nearly forfeited: reinforcing my determination to avoid such an error again. During the reception, Jake's gaze repeatedly shifted between me and the stables as the sun began to drop. He grasped my hand and suggested a stroll. My pulse raced as I followed him in silence until we arrived at the gate of the horse pasture, where a magnificent bay horse grazed nearby. Daniel turned to me, his eyes scrutinizing my expression. "How do you feel?" he said. He inquired softly, and I inhaled deeply, contemplating my response meticulously. Ultimately, I expressed my gratitude for him, for us, and for this opportunity. To clarify, the horse is very gorgeous, but that is the entirety of the occurrence. That day was a grave error, one I shall never replicate by being here with you today. This is everything I desire, all I shall ever desire. Jake's eyes filled with tears as he drew me into a firm embrace. We remained in that position for an extended period until the sun sank below the hills. That day signified a pivotal moment in our healing journey. It did not miraculously resolve all issues, as we still had efforts to undertake and trust to restore. However, it represented a substantial advancement. In the subsequent months, Jake and I diligently focused on our relationship, prioritizing transparency by expressing our fears and insecurities rather than allowing them to fester. We also began to articulate our affection more openly. We revisited our future plans, a discussion we had not engaged in since the incident. One evening, while seated on our back porch observing the sunset, Jake turned to me with a grave expression and stated, "Layla, I have been contemplating, and I believe I am prepared to begin trying for a baby." My heart momentarily skipped a beat, as we had previously discussed the prospect of having children. Prior to the events that transpired, I had presumed that the dream was lost. "Are you?" "Indeed," I inquired, almost allowing myself to hope. Daniel nodded, a faint grin on his lips. "I am certain that what transpired was dreadful. It will perpetually remain a component of our narrative, although it does not include our entire tale. I adore you, Layla. I aspire to establish a family." Tears of delight cascaded down my cheeks as I embraced him. "I love you too, Danielso. As I write this, I am 6 months pregnant with our first child. Our path has been arduous, and I anticipate other hardships ahead. However, I am no longer the individual I was on that terrible day by the stream. I am now significantly stronger, self-aware, and profoundly appreciative of the love and life I possess. To those who may be inclined to succumb to a transient impulse, regardless of its allure, I implore you to pause and contemplate the potential ramifications, not solely for yourself but also for your loved ones. No ephemeral exhilaration justifies the ensuing anguish and distress. Furthermore, for those grappling with the challenge of forgiving a partner who has erred gravely, I can only emphasize that forgiveness is a journey rather than a destination. It necessitates time, effort, and a readiness to be vulnerable. However, if both individuals are dedicated to healing and personal growth, it is feasible to restore trust and cultivate a relationship that is more resilient than before. As for myself, I shall devote the remainder of my life to proving myself worthy of the forgiveness and trust bestowed upon me by Daniel. Each day, I consciously choose to embody fidelity and honesty. With affection, I embrace our marriage, our future, and our family. The errors of our past need not define us. Rather, they can serve as a catalyst for significant transformation and development. My moment of vulnerability nearly jeopardized everything, yet it also facilitated my evolution into a more resilient individual, imparting the genuine worth of love, trust, and forgiveness. As I sense our baby move within me, I am imbued with hope. Daniel and I have had a tumultuous period for the future that may have divided us, yet it ultimately united us. We are not flawless, and our relationship is not without imperfections, yet it is authentic and sincere. It is constructed upon a foundation of affection and mutual respect that has been challenged. Our narrative is far from concluded, despite being established and resilient. I perceive this as only the commencement, and I am thankful for each moment, every challenge, and every chance to demonstrate to Daniel and myself that love can indeed prevail over all obstacles.